Good morning. It's June 7th here in Seoul, and I'm Kim Dami. Let's begin with these stories making the headlines at this hour, starting with South Korea becoming a non-permanent UNSC member. For the third time, the country will take a seat at the United Nations Security Council as one of the 10 non-permanent members for 2 years starting next year. Our On Point takes a closer look at what this means. The World Bank has lifted its 2023 global growth outlook from 1.7% to 2.1%, but also noted higher interest rates and the Ukraine crisis will take a bigger toll on next year's results. A major dam collapse in Ukraine leads to a mass evacuation due to flooding. Both Ukraine and Russia blame each other for the destruction. South Korea has been elected to the UN Security Council after an 11-year break. South Korea's ambassador to the UN pointed to the North Korean issue among the top agendas, vowing to expand cooperation not only with the US and Japan, but also with China and Russia. Lee Kyung-eun reports.
Republic of Korea, 180.
South Korea was elected to the UN Security Council on Tuesday, winning support of more than two-thirds of the UN General Assembly. The two-year term as a non-permanent member kicks off at the start of next year. This marks the country's return to the Security Council after 11 years and only the third time it has been on the council. Also elected for a temporary seat in the 15-member body are Algeria, Guyana, Sierra Leone, and Slovenia, representing their respective regions. South Korea's ambassador to the UN, Hwang Jin-guk, pledged to expand South Korea's role as global pivotal state, that by increasing cooperation with developing countries, given the nation's own transition from a global aid recipient to a donor nation. He also pointed to North Korean issues as a key agenda amid increased provocations by the regime.
We are ready to deal with other significant regional and thematic Security Council issues, including counterterrorism and the long-standing DPRK issues, both nuclear and the human rights situation.
South Korea may have a stronger voice on North Korean issues now that it is part of the only UN body that can make legally binding decisions like imposing sanctions and authorizing use of force. The ambassador stressed enhancing cooperation with the U.S. and Japan on the matter, highlighting the three taking UN Security Council seats together for the first time since 1997. However, as the body cannot make a decision if there is a veto from one of the 5 permanent members, the ambassador vowed to expand cooperation with China and Russia, despite their stance on North Korea unlikely to change. Lee Kyung-eun, Arirang News.
While recognizing difficulties in taking action against North Korea due to China and Russia's veto power at the UN Security Council, the U.S. says Washington won't tolerate violations by Pyongyang. U.S. State Department Undersecretary for Arms Control Bonnie Jenkins said this at a meeting hosted by the Center for a New American Security on Tuesday. And Jenkins called China and Russia's positions against the other 3 permanent members of UNSC challenging. Now, when asked if Washington is no longer pursuing denuclearization on the Korean Peninsula, she says the U.S. still hasn't given up and that they still want to denuclearize the North. South Korea commemorated the 68th Memorial Day on Tuesday to remember those who fought and sacrificed themselves for the country. During the main ceremony at Seoul National Cemetery, President Yoon stressed the importance of national defense and honoring the patriots. Our Kim Do-yeon reports.
As South Korea celebrates its 68th Memorial Day, President Yoon took the opportunity to emphasize national defense in front of fallen heroes at Seoul National Cemetery. Pointing towards North Korea's missile and nuclear provocations, he touted the new Washington Declaration and the enhanced support it ensures.
저와 바이든 대통령은 지난 4월 미 핵 자산의 확장 억제 실행력을 획기적으로 강화하는 워싱턴 선언을 공동 발표했습니다. 한미 동맹은 이제 핵 기반 동맹으로 격상되었습니다.
During his speech, he also took the chance to remind the country of the importance of remembering and honoring the fallen soldiers. Specifically, he repeated words heroes and freedom 8 times in his 9-minute speech, with words remember and respect also appearing for multiple times. This comes as the Yoon administration has reorganized the government to upgrade veteran affairs to full-fledged ministry status from the sub-ministry level. He also said the country has to pay tribute to the patriots and fallen soldiers to be recognized by the international community as a proper nation.
대한민국은 국민이 주인인 나라, 자유민주주의 국가를 건설하기 위해 독립과 건국에 헌신하신 분들, 공산 전체주의 세력에 맞서 자유를 지켜내신 분들의 희생과 헌신 위에 서 있습니다. 이분들은 국가의 영웅입니다.
During the ceremony, President and First Lady Kim Gun-hee also attended the burial of a recently identified fallen soldier from the Korean War, Kim Bong-hak, as his body was laid alongside his brother Kim Sung-hak, already resting at the Seoul National Cemetery. According to the spokesperson for the top office, President Yoon also paid an unexpected visit to the part of the cemetery where Vietnam War veterans and those that died fighting North Korean spies were laid. This part was made in 1981, and it was the first time a sitting president visited and paid their respects. According to an official at the top office, the move could be seen as a reminder of the alertness required for the nation with what's currently happening on the peninsula. Kim Do-yeon, Arirang News.
As our Lee Kyung-in reported earlier, South Korea will take a role as a non-permanent member of the UN Security Council for 2 years starting next year. Then, what does this mean? I mean, how vocal and engaging can South Korea be on the international level? To answer these questions, we're joined by Professor Lee Hyun this morning. Welcome to the program.
Hey, good morning. Thank you.
Thanks for joining us. South Korea has won a UN Security Council seat. This is the third time for the country to serve as one of the 10 non-permanent UNSC members. What does this mean for South Korea? I mean, why is it so noteworthy, Professor?
This is very significant because the Security Council has the primary responsibility to maintain international peace and security in the international system. And so South Korea's membership on the committee, on the council, is significant insofar as it now participates directly in voting on resolutions that are binding on all member states. And so because the world is so volatile today, especially with North Korean-related issues, the situation in Russia and Ukraine, South Korea will be front and center now with respect to those discussions within the Security Council and give its direct input on those kinds of decisions. And so South Korea's standing now in the world community has, of course, always been growing since the last 20 years or so. And so this really is partly also symbolic in terms of Korea's position within the global community as being a legitimate world leader.
Right, then let's talk about the roles that the country will be in charge of for the next 2 years, right? What roles and responsibilities will South Korea be tasked with?
Well, as I mentioned, South Korea now will be in the discussion and directly involved in the debates regarding, statements and resolutions that are going to be passed by the Security Council. And so because now South Korea will be involved in those discussions very directly, its input will actually be very, very important because other countries will now lobby South Korea with respect to various matters around the world that require the Security Council's attention. And so South Korea will be able to, address those issues, but also, express its desires with respect to the international community, particularly in matters related to human rights, nuclear proliferation, and other areas where South Korea has a great interest in. And so this is really, I think, a big role to be played in the next 2 years, starting in 2024, when South Korea takes its seat on the Security Council.
Right. The decision comes at a very timely manner, considering all the challenges and urgent issues that we're facing here on the Korean Peninsula.
Absolutely. With respect to especially North Korean provocations, with the recent testing of the satellite missile launch, this is a topic of great concern to the region, and particularly South Korea, given the threats that North Korea presents to Seoul, particularly with respect to its missile technology and the development of nuclear weapons. And so there's great concern that North Koreans are thwarting these resolutions, which it must follow under United Nations resolutions.
Right. Now, speaking of that spy satellite you just mentioned, South Korean authorities are still working to retrieve the debris of the rocket that fell into the West Sea, right? It's been a week. Professor Lee, why is it taking so long? And when it is retrieved, how much information about the rocket can we actually find out?
Well, this was the debris of the rocket fell, about 200 kilometers west of South Korea, basically, and this is in the West Sea. And so the conditions there, of course, are not stable. And this is, we're talking about, varying depths with respect to the debris. So finding the debris itself is going to be very, very challenging. But once the debris is actually found, the idea here will be that the South Korean authorities, as well as others, including the United States, will be able to examine the type of rocket that was used and the state of technology of North Korea in terms of how far they have progressed with respect to this ballistic missile technology, which, of course, has been banned by the Security Council. And so now the question will be, how will the Security Council, as well as South Korea and the United States, respond to this incident?
Right. The authorities are resuming their operation today, and let's see how that goes. Before we let you go, according to a recent report from Japan's Nagasaki University over the weekend, on Tuesday, North Korea is believed to own 40 nuclear warheads. Now, that means the regime has secured at least 30 more nuclear warheads over the past decade. What does that mean? What's your take on this?
Yeah, it's very, very worrisome because, naturally, the whole idea of sort of the international system was to, especially in terms of rejecting North Korea's nuclear ambitions, if in fact this is true, then North Korea is, of course, even unofficially now a nuclear state. But in terms of its threat with respect to the region, obviously this is why the Washington Declaration that was recently announced between the United States and South Korea on the occasion of the summit between the two leaders, I think is very important because South Korea obviously doesn't have its own nuclear weapons. And so the question is if North Korea is able to then put them on missiles and somehow being able to deliver them, even with not with respect just to ballistic missile technology, but short-range missiles, and directly threatening South Korea, this is going to be of great concern because now the question is how will South Korea then respond given the proliferation that's happening on the peninsula? And I think this is going to be the question going forward is, what will South Korea do with respect to this threat? Obviously, given the United States concerns in the region and Japan as well, this trilateral cooperation is going to be seen as more important going forward in addressing this real threat.
Indeed. Thank you so much for your insight and joining us this morning, Professor Lee Hyun.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Around 40,000 people are said to be evacuating after a dam in the southern Ukraine city collapsed on Tuesday. Both Ukraine and Russia are blaming each other for the dam collapse. Lee Seung-ja has more.
Thousands are being evacuated after the destruction of a dam in the Ukrainian city of Novokakhovka on Tuesday. According to President Vladimir Zelensky, some 80 towns and villages are at risk of flooding, with authorities saying some 40,000 people needed to evacuate as water is surging down the Dnipro River, creating a flood risk for the Ukrainian city of Kherson. Zelensky blamed the collapse on Russia, saying it's impossible for Ukraine to have done it from the outside, as the dam is under Russian control.
It is physically impossible to blow it up somehow from the outside, by shelling. It was mined. It was mined by the Russian occupiers, and they blew it up.
However, Moscow denies the allegations, saying that the dam's collapse was due to nothing other than an act of sabotage by Ukraine. The Kremlin added that Kyiv conducted the act to distract attention from a failed counteroffensive against Russian forces. Speaking to reporters, Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov said Ukraine was also trying to deprive Russian-annexed Crimea of the fresh water it receives from the reservoir. Meanwhile, White House spokesperson John Kirby said Tuesday that Washington cannot say conclusively who's to blame for the dam collapse, but added that the damage to the Ukrainian people and to the region will be significant. Despite the impact the dam collapse could have, President Zelensky says the incident will not affect Ukraine's planned counteroffensive operation. Taken to Telegram on Tuesday, Zelensky stressed that the destruction of the dam would not affect Kyiv's ability to deoccupy its territories. Zelensky says Russia acted chaotically in destroying the dam, ultimately allowing their own weapons to be flooded in the process. 이승재, Arirang News.
The World Bank has raised its outlook for the global economy this year, but cut its 2024 outlook due to monetary tightening and war in Ukraine. Our economic correspondent Shin Ha-young has more.
The latest global growth outlook for this year has been set at 2.1%. That's according to the World Bank's Global Economic Prospects report released Tuesday, which has revised up its previous forecast of 1.7% from back in January. The revision comes as the U.S., China, and other key economies have proven more resilient than expected. But it's well below the 2022 growth rate of 3.1% due to geopolitical conflicts like the situation in Ukraine, supply chain risks, and monetary tightening around the world. The World Bank also cut its global growth forecast for 2024 to 2.4% from 2.7% in January, citing the ongoing effects of monetary policy, which has seen business investment reduced. It also raised concerns over the possibility of a further economic slowdown caused by stress in the banking sector. By region, the U.S. economy is expected to grow at 1.1% this year, while China's growth is expected to climb to 5.6% due to its recovery from COVID-19 lockdowns. However, the bank cut its previous 2024 forecast for both countries. In the Eurozone, growth is forecast to slow to 0.4% in 2023 from 3.5% in 2022 due to the lagged effect of monetary policy tightening and energy price increases. The outlook for South Korea's growth was not mentioned in the report, but the bank expects East Asian economies to improve alongside China's recovery. Meanwhile, on the back of the revised outlook, U.S. stocks closed higher on Tuesday. The Dow Jones Industrial Average rose 0.03%, while the tech-heavy Nasdaq gained 0.36%. The S&P 500 rose 0.24% to finish at its highest level since August last year. Shin Ha-young, Arirang News.
Good morning, I'm Matthew Ashley, and we now turn over to stories from around the world. We begin in Haiti, where at least 54 people have been killed in floods and an earthquake. On Tuesday, the city of Jérémie was hit by a 4.9 magnitude earthquake that killed at least 3 people. Search and rescue efforts are underway in the city, and over 24 others have been reported injured. The U.S. Geological Survey says the earthquake occurred at a shallow depth of 10 kilometers. The earthquake came just days after at least 51 people were killed and 13,000 more were displaced due to torrential rains and flooding. Haiti is facing a humanitarian crisis amid gang violence and natural disasters. According to the United Nations, almost 5.2 million Haitians are in need of humanitarian assistance. Turning over now to the United States, former New Jersey Governor Christie has launched his 2024 presidential election campaign. This is Christie's second attempt at winning the seat after falling well short of the Republican presidential nomination in 2016. The former Trump supporter turned critic has joined a number of Republicans, all vying for the party's presidential nomination. Christie has accused sitting President Joe Biden and former leaders Donald Trump and Barack Obama of dividing America. His launch comes a day after former Vice President Mike Pence filed paperwork for his own bid for the Republican presidential nomination. But it will be an uphill battle for those candidates, as Donald Trump is currently leading the polls by a wide margin. Now, the PGA Tour announced on Tuesday that it will merge with rival LIV Golf. The new surprise partnership will also include Europe's DP World Tour and will form a new collectively owned entity aimed at unifying the game. The US-based PGA and its Saudi-backed rival have been at odds since LIV launched in June last year. The PGA filed a series of legal disputes against LIV. It accused LIV and its financial backers of interfering in PGA business by offering its players millions of dollars to break their PGA contracts. The PGA temporarily banned players that participated in LIV events and even considered a lifetime ban. The new partnership announcement has drawn criticism from some golf players and the families of the 9/11 terrorist attacks, who accuse the PGA of hypocrisy. And finally, the first man to run the 100-meter sprint in under 10 seconds has died at the age of 76. Once known as the world's fastest man, Hines made history by running the 100-meter sprint at the U.S. Championships in Sacramento in June 1968 in a hand-timed 9.9 seconds. He then went on to the Mexico City Olympics in October that same year, where he ran the sprint in an electronically timed 9.95 seconds. This was to win his first individual Olympic gold medal. Now, born in 1946 in the U.S. state of Arkansas, Hines was initially interested in baseball and football, but was asked by his tricycle track running coach to try the sport.
Good morning. It's a cloudy start to the day. Central regions are under cloudy skies with some drizzle in the capital area and west of Gangwon-do province. Then later, please look out for passing rain in some upper areas from this afternoon into the evening, with thunderstorms and perhaps hail at times. Then afternoon highs will go up a couple of degrees higher in Gyeongsang-do provinces and nearby areas, with seeing highs jumping above 30 degrees Celsius this afternoon under sunnier skies. So do expect to have very high UV rays for those in the southern parts of the country. Daejeon and Gwangju will see a high of 28 degrees. Daegu and Gyeongju will be topping out at 31 degrees Celsius this afternoon. And breathable air quality expected nationwide today. And for the rest of the week, central parts of the country will see frequent showers, while the south remains mostly sunny. Then the chance of rain will last through the weekend. Meanwhile, east of Gangwon-do province remains dry, rising wildfire risk. So please be careful with anything that could cause a blaze. That's Korea for you, and here's a look at the international weather conditions.
That wraps up today's New Day at Arirang. Arirang News will be back at 12 p.m. Korea time. Thanks for watching.
In what sort of environments do new enterprises typically flourish and succeed? It should be a place that helps an enterprise to grow, where an enterprise can realize its unlimited potential with talented human resources, where the success of a business is guaranteed. It is the Chungbuk Free Economic Zone.
Hello, I'm Jernej Müller, Ambassador of Slovenia to the Republic of Korea. Right now, I see Korea shining in the world. Korea has many strengths, and the global presence is already here. Slovenia will continue to establish the presence in the international scene. This is also one of the reasons why we opened the embassy in Korea last year. I always thank Arirang TV for playing a big role in promoting Korean information to the world so that many people can access Korean content and get to know all aspects of Korean culture. I hope that people around the world will continue to communicate and sympathize with Korea. Resonating the world, Arirang.
Loved and watched around the world. We want to make more animations to reach more children. Traveling time and space. Developing adventure and curiosity. Infinite creativity and hope. We want our children to grow up to be happy. Animation, watched by children all around the world. So that joy can be felt when our animation is watched. This is the reason we make animation and share with the world. K-Animation, befriending children all over the world.
We're here to make a new type of news. New insights, new styles, and new topics every day.
We are News Generation. Making news just for you. It's June 7th here in Seoul. I'm Yoon, and this is News Generation, where we make the news at Arirang's very own open studio. Every morning, we'll discuss the top issues and latest current affairs affecting people in their 20s and 30s. Joining me in the studio is Nal Song.
Good morning, everyone.
And today we have a very special guest. It's Kwon Joo-hyun. Welcome, Joo-hyun.
Hello, everybody. Well, this is Kwon Joo-hyun. I'm a news presenter at Arirang Radio, and it's so nice, so lovely to see you guys today.
Oh, it's such a pleasure to have you here today.
Thank you so much.
Now, both are here to speak on behalf of people in their 20s and 30s. As usual, let's start with our news feed, which covers different hashtags and news items that have been trending on social media over the past 24 hours. Now, Korean temple food is apparently the latest craze among millennials and Gen Z. According to Related Industries on Monday, a temple food restaurant in Seoul named in the Michelin Guide has already been fully booked for this month. The hashtag Temple Safe Food also went viral, and experts believe this is because millennials and Gen Z are highly interested in looking for healthy pleasure and dieting. Now, the CEO of JP Morgan, Jamie Dimon, paid a visit to South Korea for the first time in 5 years. After traveling to China, Taiwan, and Japan over the past week, Dimon came to Seoul on Monday and has since met with the country's top financial leaders. The Wall Street mogul told reporters he wanted to find out what position South Korean financial institutions would take amid toughened U.S.-China relations. Now, Dimon said in many numerous press interviews that decoupling with China was not the way to go. And recently in Korea, the name Chung Yoo-jung hit headlines. She's a 23-year-old charged with the murder of a woman in her 20s in Busan. Chung met the victim, a university student and freelance tutor, on a tutoring matching app. What outraged the public was that she confessed that she killed the victim simply out of curiosity. Since then, police have administered psychiatric tests, and it turns out Chung has been diagnosed with psychopathy, and police are planning to submit the test results to prosecutors later today. Now, we're going to take a closer look at the last hashtag. Police have extended time to investigate Chung Yoo-jung because of her unclear motives. To share more details on how it happened, Chung allegedly met the victim through a tutoring matching app. She then disguised herself as a parent who wanted to teach her child English. And on the day of the murder, which was May 26th, she allegedly dressed up in a school uniform to look like a student and then killed her tutor at her house. Now, what's shocking authorities is how calm Chung was. The CCTV footage reportedly shows Chung dragging a suitcase with a dismembered victim inside it. Now, Chung allegedly changed into the victim's clothes because there were bloodstains on the uniform she was wearing at the time. And Joo-hyun, when I first heard this story, I was very shocked because of how easily the suspect found her victim. And she met her target on a tutoring matching app, which I've also used in the past. And it made me think about, could a lot of college students have actually deactivated their accounts as well, which made me think, could you actually blame them? It's so scary to be using these apps. And some are even saying that we need more screening for those who actually use apps like these. So what are your thoughts on that?
Well, tutoring matching application itself, it is a system that strangers meet strangers. So I definitely believe that it is exposed to certain risks. So why don't we conduct a psychopath test for everybody who would like to join the application? And one more suggestion is that why don't we hire a broker? The application, the company itself should hire a broker. I mean, a broker that can facilitate the connection between the two parties, like a real estate agent.
For sure. I think
that's
a great idea. And I think we should have a psychiatric test for the broker as well.
Yeah, make sure. Just make sure.
Make sure everyone is safe there. And the Busan Metropolitan Police Agency has actually disclosed Chung's name, age, and photo 6 days after the arrest. And in Korea, authorities revealed the info of the suspect considering how dangerous or violent the criminal act was. And on the internet, some have been arguing that the standards of authorities revealing suspects' info isn't too fair, and some are looking at this as a gender issue. But what are your thoughts on this?
You know, I think in comparison to the Busan male who kicked a woman, and he was actually revealed by a YouTuber, and there was another man who was trying to lure elementary girls, and he's had prior convictions. So for this particular case, her information was revealed a lot more quickly, and there are cases where, you know, profile is revealed 5-6 days after the arrest. So I can see why people are saying, you know, this is a gender issue because Chung is a woman. While it may be unfair, I just think other criminals' profiles should have been revealed just as quickly, you know, and I think in terms of punishment, rehabilitation first and foremost is key. There needs to be education, there needs to be psychotherapy so they don't commit the same crimes again, but not to say that we should, overlook their crimes. This definitely deserves some, serious punishment, like lifelong sentences. Murder, sex crimes should be taken very, very seriously.
For sure. So you're just saying as much as it's important to penalize these people, it's also important to, reinforce our rehabilitation.
For sure.
And all right, that was our news feed for this Wednesday. Let's move on to today's discussion topic. Now, take a look at the screen to find out what we'll be talking about.
언니, 누나, 아줌마, 이모. These are all different ways you can refer to other women here in Korea. Confusing, right? Especially for foreigners.
I feel like people just mainly say out of respect because they don't know, maybe they don't know someone's age, so they just say that just in case someone is older than them.
I feel like there's a sense of seniority. A lot of in Korean culture, it's like a very senior based and like a lot of much like you have to a term like it's more like you're friends with them. Yeah. But since they're older than you, you call them 언니.
Yeah. Out of respect.
Or like hyung. Yeah. Same thing, out of respect or out of like, even though you're friends, you still want to keep that level of like basically respect and showing admiration for them in a way.
Yeah, but I feel like in the States there's not like that respect culture for like someone maybe 2 years older than you. Like you would still just call them out of like their name. Like for example, Raj is older than me. I just call him Raj. I don't call him like Raj. What would be the Oppa? Yeah, I don't. So I just call him Raj. Yeah.
Another aspect to this issue is that Korean titles have different connotations behind them, which can sometimes cause offense or conflict.
I don't want to be called 아줌마, maybe 이모, but I'm young. I would prefer 언니.
If you call me 아저씨, I'd think you're trying to pick a fight. I would get angry. I'd much rather be called a student.
Today, NewsGen aims to answer 3 questions. 1. What's the different nuance behind these different titles used in Korea? 2. How can different understanding of these nuances lead to conflicts? 3. Are there similar concepts abroad?
So as you just saw on the screen, I went to the streets of Gangnam asking people what type of titles they prefer to be called. And here in Korea, there's just so many different ways you can refer to other people, and it all depends on what your gender is and how old you are. But for more, why don't you walk us through all these different confusing titles there are here in Korea?
Yes. So I've actually prepared a visual aid for our short little Korean lesson for the day. Let's take a look at the screen.
All right.
You may have actually heard of these terms before. 언니 is a female younger sibling calling an older female sibling. So in my case, I would call an older girl 언니 if we're close, whether we're related actually or not. Oppa, again, is a female calling an older male sibling. But in Korea's case, it's often used in like a loving way to call your boyfriend who is older. And, for men, it's either hyung for older males or 누나 for older females. And sometimes your boyfriend who's younger than you may kind of, flirt with you by calling you 누나 instead of your name. But I personally cannot stand that because I have a younger brother and that, creeps me out like nothing else. And
you don't want to hear
see how this is confusing, right? Yeah.
For sure. And when I actually talked to the people at Gangnam, a lot of people were familiar with the terms oppa or 언니, all because of K-pop and K-dramas.
Right.
And I think a lot of global viewers could agree that they've heard about them. And there are different nuances that these two words have. For instance, as you mentioned, 누나 might be that little it can refer to your older sister.
I prefer 누나.
I like 누na too. Yes. Yeah. But that might be because I don't have a younger brother.
Do you have a younger brother?
I don't have a brother.
That's why. See, there's different nuances to these words, and we wanted to ask our global viewers if they were well aware about the different nuances and the terms we have in Korea. Also, if they have any similar ones themselves. So take a look at the screen to find out what 3 of them had to say. Danny Omega said in Pakistan, we can call any male bai, which means brother, which is equivalent to hyung oppa, and any female baji, which means sister, which is equivalent to Korean 언니 누나. Ashika said in India, for official purposes, we usually use ma'am or sir sister. And we do use bai behen, usually for younger ones, which refers to brothers and sisters, and baya didi, which means hyung 언니 in Hindi. Benny said, in the Philippines, I always address people as sir, ma'am, and eight, which means 언니, 누나 in Filipino, kuya, which means opa, hyung in Filipino. It's quite fascinating to see that there's so many different titles in other countries as well, don't you think?
That's right, and it's so interesting to learn that there are some countries using certain words for brothers and sisters. Let's pretend that we are in Turkey. That means yeğen and nail. You should call me abla. Abla means 언니. Abi for oppa.
Oh, is it also used kind of like in a cute way for boyfriends as well, like abi?
Yes, you can use that like an abi in that way. Yes.
Oh, okay, I see. You know, it's also funny because I used to live in Morocco and they do have this word for brother, khoya, but they usually don't say that in like a loving way between boyfriend girlfriends. But I do want to talk about how they call people in restaurants, like waiters. Like, you know, we would just say Mohammed, which is a very common name, Mohammed or Si Mohammed, Simo, and it's like calling somebody 철수야 in Korea in a restaurant, but people would turn their heads because it's almost a mutual understanding that, you know, that's how you call waiters.
So even though your name is not Mohammed,
it could be Omar, but they would still turn when you say Mohammed.
And 철수야, for those of our viewers who might not know, it's a very common Korean male name, like along with Minsu.
That's right.
Younghee in Korean. So definitely it is fascinating to see, but I think it could be confusing if you're a foreigner who just came to Korea or is visiting to hear all these different titles being used for different scenarios. So we're going to hear from an actual global millennial who's been living in Seoul for a few years to find out which titles were most confusing for him. To find out more about how confusing different titles can be in Korea, we're going to include Lee Ratty in our talks. Now, Lee's been living in Korea for 11 years now. Welcome back, Lee. Lee, can you hear us? Oh, hi. Hello.
It's good to see you, ladies, or my sisters. 여동생.
Those, yeah. Yeah.
학생들, I love that.
We like that. I love being called students.
Exactly. Now, I would like to ask you the first question of our interview. Which title made you most confused when you first came to Korea? Was it 언니, 오빠, 아줌마? Which one was it?
Yeah, it's definitely how you refer to your sisters. Because when I first came to Korea, actually, all the people that I was working with and that I was learning Korean from, you know, these are the people that I copy when I use my Korean. And so, of course, you know, I've had so many embarrassing situations where it just slips out, where I'm like, oh, 언니, 오빠. And it's like, oh, once you say it, you're like, oh, no. Very embarrassing.
Yeah. Right. I think I've had those similar situations in other countries, but you know, you're from the States, so compare the United States where you oftentimes when you get close to people call them by names. What do you think of, you know, South Korea's title culture? What do you think it is like?
You know, it's definitely more formal than the States, and there's, you know, some great things about it. In the States, you know, someone said before it's about respect, and I don't think it is. I think it's just a different way of communicating respect in the States, because in the States, there's people value the sense of sincerity and openness. Not that it is sincere, but the sense of it. And so, hey, we're just peers. And if someone is older or has a more senior title, they're going to be quick to say, hey, just call me by my first name, okay? Just call me Tom. Tom. You know, we're close. You can be real with me. You can be honest. First name basis.
Interesting indeed.
But I think the title culture here, I think it's nice because it gives you a clear sense of who's who, like right from the beginning. And I think it's really enduring to call, you know, guys and girls like your brothers and your sisters. That's definitely nice. However, I mean, I've had so many times where I only call a person by their title, and then I realize after a long time, I don't even know their name.
Oh,
so, if you have trouble remembering names, I guess it's a good thing.
It's a good thing.
Yeah, so may I call you Lee?
Of course. Please, yeah.
Yeah,
Be
so
honest.
Lee, so in Korea, do you actually use those different types of names that Korean people use? And one more question. Let's say that you met a stranger on the street. What is your go-to phrase if you've got to talk to them?
Yeah, of course. I definitely try to use the right titles because I want to operate by the culture. But there's a lot of times where I still don't know what to say exactly, or I'm afraid, Ajima for sure. But in the times where it's ambiguous, I don't want to make a person feel bad. So also, if you were to refer to someone's job title like lower than they are, 팀장님, 팀장님. So sometimes I avoid that just so I don't make them feel bad. And so my rule is, if it's a man, 아저씨, and if it's a woman, 저기요. Excuse me.
Very wise.
We're actually going to be talking about that right after our interview, so please stay in tune. But I would like to ask you the last question. Any tips you'd like to give other foreigners who might find it really difficult to know what to call someone, especially when they're just out on the streets and may have a question?
Right, yeah. Okay, so good tip is, in terms of age, just always aim lower. So 할머니 is 아줌마, 아줌마 이모, 이모 is 언니 or 누나, and 누나 is 학생. There you go.
Okay.
And when in doubt, 저기요.
That's
Good
great,
tip.
Lee.
That's very
aim
practical.
lower. I think that's the most realistic and the most efficient way to go. Thank you so much. It was a pleasure having you on our show today.
Good luck out there, everyone.
All right, and Lee mentioned a lot of great tips. I mean, he's been living here for 11 years, so all the tips he have, you should take it in for sure. Now, but not only are these different titles used difficult and confusing, but they have so many different nuances which can sometimes lead to conflicts. So, Xian, why don't you talk to us about some conflicts caused by people addressing certain people with the wrong title?
Of course. Well, I reckon many expats are confused by this title, 이모, or aunt, in restaurants, of course. So when Koreans dine out, they call the waitress 이모, 반찬 좀 더 주세요. Give us more side dishes. By the way, it's free of charge.
Yes,
on board.
free.
So you might think that, are they family? Are they related? Are they bonded? No, they are not. They're not a huge family. Well, to clarify, 이모, it means aunt or mother's sister. But the thing is, it is often used as a friendly way to call the waitress in Korean restaurants.
It's exactly like Mohammed in Morocco, as you mentioned.
Right, indeed.
Exactly like that. And actually, when you're shopping, you'll find that people will call you 언니, no matter how old they are and no matter how old you are. So it could be a 30-year-old person calling a 50-year-old 아주머니, like 언니, because you want your customers to feel good, and it's like a polite way of calling, miss. Yeah. So that's like a fun way to, it could even be a male shop owner calling a female client 언니, and that's not strange.
It's not strange at all. But to be honest, when I first came to Korea, I was quite surprised when my mom, she was in her 40s, called this other hair salonist in her 20s 언니. I was like, Oma, you're not. She's clearly much younger than you. But as Lee mentioned, I think lowering the aim of the age is always polite, especially here in Korea. But what do you think are the titles that really irk you? You don't want to hear this out in public. Are there any that, annoy you?
Well, so far, nobody has called me 아줌마 yet. I'll put the condition yet. Yeah, 아줌마, middle-aged woman or a married woman. But generally speaking, people feel free to call an older man 아저씨. They don't feel offended, right? But if somebody calls me 아줌마, I won't be happy. I won't see that person ever, because I think that I would think that my physical appearance, the way I'm speaking, my attitude, my style are being criticized.
Right.
Still, 아줌마 has an image of being aggressive, self-centered in public places, hunting for empty seats. That's true.
Yeah.
So instead of using 아줌마, I suggest, why don't we use 사모님?
Oh, 사모님.
사모님. It means, it indicates a wealthy woman or a married woman, middle-aged married woman.
Madam.
So, Madam, that's right.
Yeah.
So if somebody calls me 사모님, I am willing to buy everything he or she sells.
We write
great.
that down
I
right
know,
now.
write that down. Calling her 사모님 from now on.
Speaking of 아줌마 and 아저씨, I've also prepared a chart to define what they are. So let's take a look at my CG.
Okay.
Here we go. So 아줌마, as we've been discussing, is originally supposed to refer to an older woman, and we often take it as kind of offensive these days, but it's just supposed to be a familiar form of 아주머니, and it's meant for relatives on the same level on the family tree as one's mother. And among strangers, like we said, it's referring to a married woman. 아저씨 in a family context is for any male relative on the same level as your father, but not his brothers. For strangers, it's just anybody who is an adult man. So it's really just subjective for whoever's viewing you as an adult or an older woman or married woman or not.
But I have to say, I would not like to be called 아줌마 for a long while.
Me neither.
Yeah, I would prefer 언니, or as Lee mentioned, 학생, student.
That's right.
Because, you know, you seem much younger. And as Lee mentioned, I think there are some phrases or titles you can get away with almost in any situation. It could be practically like a Joker card, don't you think? What is those titles that we should be looking for?
I think 사장님, which is supposed to mean, you know, like the shop owner, CEO, or boss person. If you call somebody 사장님 in a shop, even if they're like a part-time worker, they'll turn around and see because they know you're looking for somebody in charge.
Right.
And I know this one isn't a title, but Lee actually mentioned it. You call a man 아저씨 and a woman 저기요. 저기요 is kind of like an excuse me. It's an 저기요, 저 is showing that you're careful to start a conversation with them. So that will always work.
You know, we were talking with our male producer before our show, and he said he didn't like 아저씨 either, though.
That's true.
He felt offended.
Yeah.
So 저기요. Yeah.
So maybe 저기요 for all situations, like an excuse me. Any Joker card of yours, Jihan?
Well, I recommend some words like this. 님 or she, Mr. or Mrs. after the names. That will be a perfect way to address someone. Not to the old. That will sound quite rude, unpolite. And, you know, if you don't know their names, this is the answer for them. 선생님. Or teacher. Of course, they are not real teachers teaching at schools, but professional, strangers, female or not, older or younger. Teacher, 선생님 is the best way, the appropriate way to call them. And FYI, never ever call a person or stranger, not close one. If you're not close with them, don't call them yeah. No. Like this,
Yeah, that's a no-no.
It means,
That's a no.
hey dude, hey buddy, hey mate.
Hey mate.
Keep
It's
that
almost
in
like
mind.
yo.
Yeah, it's like yo.
That's right.
Yeah.
Perfect way. Yeah. Don't say that to a stranger.
Yeah, I think regardless of whether you're in Korea or not, I think in any country, it's always best if you don't know that person, aim high for their profession and aim low for their age. I think those are two tips you should go for. And all right, we'll be here every day from 9:30 to 10 a.m. Korea time, bringing you more topics young people are talking about. Special thanks to Nell Song.
No problem.
And Jian, it was your first day on our show.
I was quite nervous.
It was wonderful to have you, though.
It was wonderful to have you. Hope we can see you again soon.
Yes, so fingers crossed.
All right. Special thanks to Kwon Ji-hyun.
Thank you for having me.
All right, and thank you everyone for watching. We'll see you tomorrow. We are News Generation.
You and I 터지는 눈물이 말하잖아 난 그냥 전부 던진 거야 아무런 망설임 따위도
K-animation, loved and watched around the world. We want to make more animations to reach more children. Traveling time and space. Developing adventure and curiosity. Infinite creativity and hope. We want our children to grow up to be happy. K-animation, watched by children all around the world. So that joy can be felt when our animation is watched. This is the reason we make animation and share with the world. K-animation, befriending children all over the world.